A couple months ago, I started to see a lot of headlines like these. These sorts of stories build off one of the most pervasive myths in all of gaming. Playing video games is not a productive pastime. They are simply a distraction, especially from schoolwork. Now, I've been a gamer for about 20 years. So I've been hearing this stereotype for a while, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But wait, don't the teenagers who just won millions of dollars prove to parents that playing video games can be worthwhile? Not exactly. Even though gamers can now make large sums of money streaming and competing, that group of professionals makes up such a small proportion of the overall community that the rate of return, thousands of hours of playtime for what might be enough money to cover your living expenses, just isn't realistic for most of us. So even this new profession is unlikely to expunge the myth that video games are simply a distraction. In other words, your mom is still going to make you go to school. So for most of us, video games, especially online competitive games, are what critics claim they are, a distraction. And that's okay. We all need a good distraction from time to time. We just have to make sure they don't, consume our lives. But are there games out there that can do more than simply distract you? Absolutely. As a gamer and a teacher and a lifelong student of learning, I yearn for fun, challenging games that will do more than just eat up the hours. So here they are, 5 incredible video games not marketed as learning tools that can actually boost your test scores. Number 1, Spec Ops The Line, Literature. There are so many games out there that tell great stories. Some of these stories, in my academically controversial opinion, border on great literature. But most of them are either really long or really short. And if you're more into shooters than RPGs or walking sims, you might think you're out of luck, but you'd be wrong. Spec Ops The Line is a solid cover-based shooter, but more than that, it takes players along one of the greatest storylines in video game history. Inspired by Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which also inspired Apocalypse Now, Spec Ops The Line turns the shooter genre on its head. How? By journeying into the philosophical and psychological quagmire that is warfare in a way few other works, video games or otherwise, have ever dared to do. Even if you don't read Heart of Darkness in school, this game is sure to have you thinking differently about other trauma-heavy pieces, like All Quiet on the Western Front or Dulce et Decorum Est. Number 2, Abzu Biology. A beautiful adventure game reminiscent of the award-winning Journey, Abzu allows players to dive into the world's oceans and explore. While not the most biologically accurate underwater game, that would be the Endless Ocean series, Abzu taps into an essential element of learning, curiosity. With its diverse set of sea creatures and ocean environments, Abzu ignites a special kind of fascination for the world under the waves. Think of it like that field trip you took to the aquarium in grade school, if that field trip was scored by a soaring orchestra and included adorable robotic companions. Number 3, Animal Crossing, Economics. Don't know anything about the stock market, debt, or how taxes fuel infrastructure? Take up residence in the world of Animal Crossing. Created by a programmer who wanted a game he could play with his child even though they were at home at different times, Animal Crossing is definitely directed at younger kids. But plenty of older gamers find it relaxing and enjoyable, and no matter what your age, it's a great way to practice money management without risking your real-life savings. Number 4, Assassin's Creed 2, Fine Arts and History. This entry is a little dated, but bear with me. The Assassin's Creed franchise as a whole does a decent job of exposing gamers to different cultures throughout time, with a lot of liberties taken along the way. But if you came to the series more recently, you need to backtrack to Assassin's Creed 2. Not only is it one of the best games in the series, it also has a lot to teach those who play it. Set in Renaissance Italy, the game is basically an introductory course in European art history. The puzzles in particular encourage players to examine famous works of art up close and personal. Number 5. Almost any game, international languages. This final entry actually inspired the whole video, and it's what I believe is the greatest educational potential of video games, learning a new language. Personally, I've been spending a lot of time studying Japanese, one of the most difficult languages for native English speakers to pick up. Thankfully, Japan happens to make a game or two. And while you need to understand some of the basics before you really benefit from playing a game in a different language, once you're past that first step, games can provide a vital component to learning any language: exposure. And here's where the linguistic rubber hits the road. You know how games can only store so much voice acting, so you invariably hear the characters say some of the same phrases over and over again? You know how that gets annoying? Well, when those phrases are spoken in your target language, that annoying repetition becomes learning. Take Valkyria Chronicles, for instance, a beautiful RPG from Sega based on World War II. When one of your characters gets injured on the battlefield, you hear this. And since that happened 30 plus times during my playthrough, I will never forget how to say medic in Japanese. Here's another way to think of it. It's also helpful to look at games marketed for children. For instance, Pokemon uses pretty basic Japanese, which is still highly advanced to me at this point. But since I grew up in the 90s and played Pokemon until my eyes morphed into Ultra Balls, I can navigate it without understanding every word. This means I can return to one of my favorite games while practicing and learning. Finally, language acquisition also gives you the opportunity to make the most of online distraction games. How many American students playing Fortnite whine and moan that they're paired with players speaking Spanish? And these American students are failing Spanish because they're playing too much Fortnite. Change your server location, squad up, and get real-time practice from native speakers. I didn't invent this idea. I know people who learned a language this way. It's remarkable. The internet is amazing. In conclusion, video games are beautiful in so many ways. I want them to be part of my life and my child's life and my students' lives, but I refuse to let them waste me away into nothing. So play video games, but make some of those hours worth more than just distraction. だが得るものはあった。礼を言う。また